All right. Okay, ready? You ready? All right. In the long, winding saga of Freemasonry, a tale emboldened with symbolism, solemnity, and the occasional unintentional comedy, few emblems delight the philosophical inclined historian as much as the curious diagram, a point, a circle, and two parallel lines standing guard like slightly impatient celestial ushers. These lines, we are told, represent St. John the Baptist and St. John the Evangelist, patrons of Masonry, bookends of Christian tradition, and the unlikely duo whose virtues we are meant to brush against as we travel the circle of life and the lodge. The point within the circle, so the ritual says, represents the individual Mason, the solitary traveler attempting to keep his passions, prejudices, and personal chaos within reasonable limits. The circle itself is his boundary, a philosophical speed limit sign cautioning against swerving too wildly into folly. And the two Saints John, they stand as perpendicular parallels, yes, a contradiction only geometry could love, guiding our journey with their lives, their lessons, and their entertaining imperfections. When I was first initiated, I gazed at that diagram with a mixture of awe and the quiet panic of someone desperately trying to memorize a script. At my proficiency practices, I recited the questions and answers flawlessly to worshipful Brother Joe, but it took much longer to wonder, what does this, the point within the circle, actually mean for me? Not merely as a Mason, but as a man fumbling his way through the centuries-old labyrinth of moral expectation. Why the two Saints John? Why indeed? To the untrained reader of Scripture, John the Baptist and John the Evangelist might seem like an improbable pair to use as role models. John the Baptist, after all, was a man who willingly ate locusts. Studies of ancient cuisine assure us that they could be served fried, boiled, dried, or raw for some of the more adventurous palate. With his camel hair wardrobe and desert wind hairstyle, he looked like someone who had lost a bet or embraced a life coach with very unconventional ideas. He was not quite diplomatic either. When called the Pharisees a brood of vipers, one imagines his poll numbers took an immediate hit. John the Evangelist, meanwhile, came from a comfortable background. His family owned fishing boats and even had hired help, making him what we might call Galilee upper middle class. Yet, like many a well-off young man of his era, he went searching for meaning, first following the rugged Baptist until Christ tapped him for his new duties. Hot-tempered in youth, Jesus nicknamed him and his brother, James, the sons of thunder. John once suggested calling down fire from heaven on a village that was insufficiently hospitable. Fortunately, Jesus vetoed what would have been history's first divine airstrike. He also demonstrated a certain ambition when he and his brother requested seats of honor besides Christ in his anticipated kingdom, an early example of resume padding. Yet, beyond their peculiarities, the two Saints John embodied qualities every Mason is meant to cultivate. John the Baptist must be viewed in his proper cultural light. As a lifelong Nazarite, he lived a life of dedication, absentation, and total commitment to proclaiming truth, even when it cost him his life. His rough garments and unruly hair were not eccentricities, but symbols of prophetic duty. He taught the necessities of inner transformation, a change of heart, character, and action. Better to die for truth, he preached, than to live comfortably with a lie. John the Evangelist, meanwhile, underwent one of Scripture's most remarkable transformations. The fiery youth matured into the apostle of love, peace, and steadfast loyalty. He was the only disciple to remain near Christ during the trial and crucifixion. He hurried to the empty tomb with the energy of someone freshly reminded of hope. He took Mary into his home, caring for her with the tenderness of a devoted son. His writings, especially his gospel and letters, are masterpieces of truth, spoken with love, conviction, and tempered with compassion. If these two remarkable men from the parallel lines within our Masonic circle, then every Mason must brush against them both. absorbing a little wisdom each time he completes the circuit. From John the Evangelist, we learn the lifelong work of subduing our passions. I've heard a story of one brother who once delayed his proficiency for 20 years, explaining, "It took me this long to learn to subdue my passions." A humorous comment, yes, but also painfully honest. Passion without restraint can descend into extremism, whether in the Middle East, Europe, or in one's own living room. From John the Baptist, we learn uncompromising truthfulness. Truth may be unpopular, but it remains the only solid foundation on which a life or a lodge can be built. The evangelist also teaches loyalty and charity. He cared for the widows and orphans entrusted to him, modeling a duty Masons still struggle to fulfill. A widow recently told me her late husband had always urged, "If anything happens to me, call the Masons." She was unsure what we could do. I wondered, what is his lodge? What would his lodge do? That question haunts us because it measures our fidelity to our principles. Brotherly love, so central to the craft, takes its finest expression into the evangelist's own words, that true love requires sacrifice, attention, and compassion for a brother in need. Charity is not merely feeling concern. It is perceiving need, often before a word is spoken. Curiously, when one travels the Masonic circle, the parallel lines appear to converge where the circle touches the volume of sacred law. The geometry may be fanciful, but the meaning is not. Both St. John were steeped in Scripture, grounded in it, illuminated by it. They trusted its wisdom and shaped their lives around its teachings. So must the Mason. The Bible, the greatest light in Masonry, rests at the center of the lodge because the moral illumination must begin at the center of the soul. Ritual alone cannot reform a man. Believe me, I know. Constant brushing against the light can and will. If Masonry is to flourish, it will not be through gimmicks or marketing campaigns, but through each brother's steady walk around the circle, touching Scripture, examining himself, learning from the examples of the two Saints John. Each encounter should leave a mark, just as chalk leaves residue even from the faintest touch. Truth, subdued passions, brotherly love, care for widows and orphans, charity. These values do not age. They do not expire. They do not fall out of fashion. They are the gold threads of civilization itself. The Holy Saints John, with all their strengths and shortcomings, offer timeless models. Their imperfections make them accessible. Their virtues make them admirable. If we follow their paths and remain faithful to the light, they assure us that we can indeed become better men. Historically, lodges were first dedicated to King Solomon. By the late 16th century, however, the St. John's had firmly entered Masonic tradition. The church had long since repurposed the ancient solstices, festivals into the feasts of the two Saints John, neatly aligning celestial cycles with spiritual symbolism. Operative Masons, noting the revered statuses of the Saints John's, naturally assumed that these holy men must also have been craftsmen of some kind, and where else would their lodges be but in Jerusalem? Thus, the lodge of the Holy St. John of Jerusalem emerged, not as a historical fact, but as a noble ideal. In truth, no such lodge stood in stone, but it stands in spirit, and that is quite enough. Ideals, after all, are the unseen scaffolding that keeps the human spirit from collapsing. When Masons say they hail from that mythical lodge, they declare their dedication to the virtues embodied by the two Saints John, inviting their teachings to shape the long apprenticeship that we call life. Thank you.
Thank you.
Does anybody have any questions or any feedback?
What was the third
The Holy
one?
Saints John, those are like each of those pillars represent. Like, I know we call them. Are you recording? All right, close up.